Hello and welcome along once again to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast which is currently planning a storyline involving both of its presenters being killed by faulty computer equipment in an episode to be broadcast on Christmas Day in order to clear out the dead wood and make way for some new blood in the cast. I'm Stu Joslin, and joining me as always is Alex Greenwood. Greenie, how do you feel about our impending fiery deaths?
I think it's long overdue, and I can't really blame the writers after our slightly lackluster storylines for the past few months. It's only understandable that they'd want in some new blood.
It's time for a change. We're losing the viewership. I mean, you know, people like my mum are going to be saying, oh, the storylines are bloody stupid now. So, yeah, it's definitely time for us to move aside and to get some new presenters in.
Yeah.
In case you didn't figure out from that lead-in, we are talking about soap operas from the 90s tonight, and we're very much looking forward to welcoming one of our favourite returning guests, Wil Hodgson, onto the show to discuss some of the high points of soap in the 90s. But before that, of course, we're partnering up tonight with Phone Relief, the revolutionary new development in telephone equipment. And it's over to the guys at Money Back Guarantee TV Products for more info.
Is talking on the phone getting out of hand? Look out! You need Phone Relief, the ultimate in hands-free phone design. Watch. Simply attach the special double back fastener to any phone. Then attach the Phone Relief headset. It's that easy. Hands-free, pain-free. You'll wonder how you ever lived without it. It's perfect for remotes. Now talk hands-free anywhere, anytime. Office work is a pain for Mr. Phone in the Neck, but you won't miss a beat with hands-free freedom. A must for the entire office. Work goes quicker and easier. The padded headset removes this easily and is fully adjustable. Best of all, Phone Relief works with your favorite phone, an amazing breakthrough product you'll use every day. Now only $12.95. Call toll-free to order by credit card and make this your last Phone in the Neck call.
How about that? And when calling in your order to the guys at Money Back Guarantee TV Products, just use the code ALRIGHT90s to receive your free postage and packaging on your Phone Relief device. That's an amazing offer, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely sensational. Such a useful product as well. To be able to, you know, deal with stuff hands-free while still be dealing with, you know, business calls, which of course we have to, you know, deal with a lot in the office through the week. So that would be perfect actually in the It'll Be Alright in the 90s office. And
it's got applications for leisure time as well. Never again will you drop your mobile into the cake mix that you're mixing while you're on the phone to Geoff about your contract renewal.
Exactly, yeah. Stu, I've got a question for you.
Fire away.
What happened to those little flickering black and white squares you would get in the corner of the screen before an advert break came up?
A very good question, and one, funnily enough, which I've been pondering recently with the return of Saint and Greavesy on ITV4 on a Saturday morning, which I've been watching for the last few weeks. There's little black and white corners of the screen galore in those programs. And yeah, quite right. I mean, it always used to obviously signify that a commercial break was coming up. Am I right in that?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know why they were phased out, and we should begin campaigning immediately for their return.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe we'll start putting them before our sponsors, just so people know that it's coming up.
What a good idea! Yes.
Obviously, that'll only work on the YouTube version of the pod.
We'll add it to the list of things we're campaigning to either bring back or get rid of. How many of these are there now?
The list is long, and I think we should have written them down actually because I can't remember most of them. But yeah, needless to say, it's a strong and important list.
I know the most recent one from the last episode was to repopularize the use of the word overdog.
Yes, we haven't done it so far this episode, have we? But it's been scant.
Not in the first 4 minutes, no.
No.
But I'll tell you what, when Will arrives and we start speaking about the soap operas, we'll try and slip it in, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Stu, I have something here which relates back to something we were talking about, I don't know, 2 or 3 episodes back now, regarding some hearsay, some rumor that was going on around the position of the now vacant position of Dad of the Pod. And I said that there'd been, some rumblings in the background. I can now read out a message that it's come into my hands. I'm not sure who this was originally sent to, but I'll read it out for you now and see what you think of this.
Okay.
All right. I know you can't nominate yourself for the honours list, and I'm definitely not doing that. No, I'm definitely not doing that. But I bumped into Geoff at the Masonic Hall the other day, and over lunch he was telling me all about your little podcast. I'd been looking for it on my wireless, but he tells me you get it on the internet, so I must look into that. He told me you were going places with it. Where to, I quipped. A pub. Well, he couldn't have heard me because he didn't laugh. Instead, he stubbed out his cigar in the butter dish and said he would put in a good word next time the honours list comes up. That's all, by the way. I was hoping next time you drop into the office, could you remind Geoff of the 50 quid I lent him for his little problem? And Alex, could you have a word with your mother? She's changed the locks again, and sleeping in the shed is no joke for anyone of my age. And honestly, the post of Dad of the Pod couldn't be further from my thoughts. Just for idle interest, though, what are the perks? I mean, what do you think of that, Stu?
Didn't know Geoff was a Mason. He kept that quiet.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this has obviously come from your father.
It would seem so, yeah.
Who is staking his claim for Dad of the Pod. Well, we would have to say that if he'd followed his own advice and Y2K proofed his computer equipment, he would have been able to pick us up no problem, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be so far behind. Listen, there's one position, and as far as I can tell, there's one person who's qualified to fill it.
It's true, yeah.
We're going to have to take this into account, aren't we?
I would say we should think about it, yes, Stu, but I'm only just hearing this now, just before we went on air. I've discovered that my dad has been installed as Dad of the Pod without either of our knowledge or consent, that's for sure. So something's happened behind the scenes. This is, I think, a first for the pod, that someone has been installed in the ledger in one of the key positions without our consent. I think we're going to have to ask for a full inquiry, an internal inquiry. But then what's the point of an inquiry if the corruption goes right to the top?
This podcast is rotten to the core. If I had to take one guess, I would guess that the initiation ceremony took place at a meeting at a Masonic Lodge.
Yes, I can imagine there were some secret handshakes, and not the usual 90s handshakes that we do every record. Something, far more sinister and Masonic.
Yeah. One trouser leg rolled up, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm absolutely disgusted, and I don't feel as if I can make any further comment until all the facts have been laid bare before us. Maybe we can look at this again on the next episode if we can put our ears to the ground and find out what exactly has gone down here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think we should comment further without our lawyers present. So, yeah, we'll leave that for the next time.
The pod's lawyer is Geoff as well, isn't it?
Oh, that's you're right.
Annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. We really need to employ someone else.
Time now for What's the Most 90s, and another good one here. It's something that I felt like threw up a lot of options for me anyway. I don't know about you, Stu. But I'm asking you today what the most 90s advertising character or mascot is. One person, I should say one entity, one being sprang to mind as soon as you asked me the question. There can only be one. It's the Honey Monster. Now, I know that the Honey Monster was in existence for a long time prior to the 1990s. In fact, he was first seen in 1976 advertising Sugar Puffs, of course. However, I just want to read from some of the highlights of his 90s career, and you can then let me know if you think he'll be worthy of a place in the pantheon. During the 90s, the Sugar Puffs Honey Monster was seen in advertisements in which he was depicted playing football and also as a James Bond-style superhero. Punk poet John Cooper Clarke also featured in a series of off-the-wall adverts in the 1990s. Having read John Cooper Clarke's excellent autobiography, by the way, the money from the Sugar Puffs adverts went towards funding his crippling heroin addiction at the time. An advertisement showing the Honey Monster on stage with Boyzone at Wembley Arena aired in 1996 and was voted in at number 17 in ITV's Best TV Ads Ever 2 list in 2006. Another of the 1996 adverts showed him winning a football match for Newcastle United alongside manager of the time Kevin Keegan. In 1998, an advert which depicted him as Puff Daddy aired, and in 1999, an advert called Monster Men vs. Breaking Boys aired. That's just some of the greatest hits of the Honey Monster throughout the 1990s. To be fair, I wasn't aware of the John Cooper Clarke adverts as much of a fan as I am of both of the people involved until I'd read JCC's autobiography a little while back. So I have to say that it's the Newcastle advert for me when the Honey Monster wins the game with an overhead kick.
Well, the game was heading for extra time. I just had to get the big fella off the bench.
Could this be their last chance now? In it comes! Monsters of the far post! He scored! The Honey Monster scored in the last minute! He's in the money! It's the Honey!
Great goal, Honey Monster!
That's football, Kev. Sugar Puffs are delicious light puffs of wheat dressed in little honey jackets.
That's the bowl. Now for the cup. Excuse me.
He turns! He lifts the cup! And Wembley goes monster mad!
I think, as we discussed before, the kit's all wrong, which just takes away somewhat from the advert as a whole for the football purist amongst us. But for an advertising character to have that sort of hit rate throughout an entire decade with other legends of the time period involved, I'm not sure can be matched.
I don't think I'm going to be able to beat that. I think that's extremely well argued, and that is quite the list of achievements for the decade, isn't it? And like you, the Newcastle United adverts are the ones that stick out in my mind. I can still picture that overhead kick to this day. So I think that's a great shout. I'll do my best, but I think you've probably got it there with the Honey Monster. My choice is also a sugary snack-based item, or a consumable, I should say, because it's Fido Dido, the official mascot of 7-Up from 1988, I think, until the present day. But I would say he was very much in his pomp in the 90s before being usurped by the Cool Spot, who got his own Mega Drive game in 95.
Yeah.
And I think he got a sequel as well on the Mega Drive, which is quite amazing. You just have to look at his style, Stu. I think Fido Dido he oozes 90s style with the very baggy t-shirt, the crew neck t-shirt, I should say, the baggy shorts, the spiky gelled up hair. He just, it was all about it. He actually looked like he was maybe related to the Spliffy Jeans guy. I think they were maybe brothers or cousins or something. It was about the style, really. Yeah, that's why I've chosen him. And I also think 7-Up was probably at its most popular in the 90s. You can obviously still buy it now, but I think it lost the war to Sprite, to be honest, in terms of popularity. I've got a couple of facts here about 7-Up, though. I just have to read out. They might back up my cause, I'm not sure, but 7-Up was created by Charles Leiper Grigg, who launched his St. Louis-based company, the Howdy Corporation, in 1920. Grigg came up with a formula for a lemon-lime soft drink in 1929. The product was originally named Bib Label Lithiated Lemon Lime Soda. It was launched 2 weeks before the Wall Street crash of 1929. It contained lithium citrate, a mood-stabilizing drug, until 1948, which I suppose is quite similar to Coca-Cola, because apparently that used to have cocaine in it, didn't it, like in the early days, back when they were considered tonics rather than fizzy drinks. But then the name was later shortened to 7-Up Lithiated Lemon Soda, before finally being shortened to just 7-Up in 1936. But I don't know about you, Stu, but I'm going to carry on referring to it as 7-Up Lithiated Lemon Soda. Just like I'm not
sure why they changed the name. It really trips off the tongue, that original name.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And then finally, it's not known exactly where the 7-Up part comes from. Some people think it's because it had 7 ingredients originally, but there's also some people are claiming that it's because it's a coded reference to lithium, which has the atomic mass of 7, and obviously was a key ingredient of early 7-Up. So that's what I'm going to believe anyway. All that aside, I think it's sort of irrelevant. As much as I like Fido Dido, I think the Honey Monster's probably going to take it. And it's an overdue victory for you, but I think well earned.
Well, I've gone all guns blazing on this one to try and turn the table slightly here. Although Fido Dido is a good shout. Was there a craze for Fido Dido car stickers at one point? I seem to remember you could get them in Halfords.
Yeah, that seems. Yeah, I can picture that now for sure.
But how did a soft drink mascot make the leap to being a mainstream car sticker in the UK?
Well, having read up on him before this episode, he actually was created before. He wasn't created specifically for 7-Up. He was created just by an artist and an ad exec, I think. And then I think he was on T-shirts very early, maybe even before 7-Up. So it could be that. It could be that he is actually a freelancer who just happens to do a lot of work for 7-Up, but had his own irons in other fires, so to speak.
Well, the Honey Monster was truly a one-brand man, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, very loyal. The Honey Monster is in the ledger.
Well, it's been a while, Alex, but I've still got some content in my anecdote roulette if you'd like to pick something from the list of stories I've got here. I've still got the biggest telling off I ever received at primary school. I've got Limahl appearing on Through the Keyhole. Or actually, it's not really an anecdote, but I could do the long-awaited listener statistics if you would prefer that. So which one would you like to choose?
I want to hear Limahl, the Limahl one, I think.
Limahl on Through the Keyhole. Okay.
Through the Keyhole, yeah.
Well, you'll remember the story I told you about Status Quo on GMTV a few weeks back when I finally managed to track down the clip. And I thought to myself, well, what other vague TV memories have I got that I might be able to track down using the magic of YouTube and finally lay these memories to rest? And one thing that I remembered was the lead singer of Kajagoogoo, Limahl, appearing on Through the Keyhole with David Frost in the late 90s. And the reason that I remembered this, and it must have been at home during a school holiday, because Through the Keyhole was very much a sort of 1:30 p.m. post lunchtime news TV show at the time, which would be on at my grandparents' house if I was staying with them. And the reason I remember Limahl so clearly is that he was wearing a shirt that I also owned, and I don't think I'd ever seen that on television before. So when I link up to the clip on the episode description, everybody, I do really recommend you go and watch it. He's wearing a fluorescent yellow Reebok sort of nylon training shirt that I also had. You'll recognise the design instantly when you see it. Think sort of Bolton Wanderers kit around that time as well, with the Reebok logo in the sort of oval on the chest. Very much like that. And he does a little shimmy as he comes through the keyhole as well when the panel have realised who he is. So again, it's a vague thing that's been in the back of my mind for ages. Managed to track it down. David Frost has a bit of banter with Limahl about his hair, and Limahl sort of admits that it's based on his hair from the 80s, but it's not actually his hair from the 80s. So there's definitely some wig technology going on there.
Now this is your real hair, or a reproduction of your real hair what is it? It's great, and thank you for bringing it.
And did you knit it yourself?
It's my imaginary real hair.
Right, your imaginary real hair.
Yeah.
Similar to what your real hair was in the early 80s.
Absolutely the same. At great expense brought to you.
But if you would like to see another clip of another randomly remembered TV show from my school holiday history, with a Reebok training shirt that I used to wear as well. It was one of my favourite shirts. I didn't really take it off for quite a while once I'd got it. So have a look at Limahl on Through the Keyhole. We'll put a link in the episode description so that everyone can enjoy it.
From Richard Nixon to Limahl, the career of David Frost. Fantastic. I wonder how many people watched the famous Richard Nixon interviews and thought, oh, he's wearing my shirt.
I wonder how many people have seen the Richard Nixon interview at the time and then saw the Limahl interview on Through the Keyhole at the time as well. I bet there's only a handful.
Yeah, the true diehard Frost heads.
If that's you, then let us know. Tonight, then, we're examining soap operas from the 90s, and who better to bring in for a deep dive on this than one of our favourite returning guests. It's a very warm welcome back to It'll Be Alright in the 90s for stand-up extraordinaire and official barber of the pod, Wil Hodgson. Will, good evening, mate. How are you doing?
I'm not so bad. How are you guys doing? You all right?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Great, thanks. Yeah, lovely to have you back on the show.
No, it's lovely to be back, mate. Lovely to be back.
So, Will, can you talk us through which programmes you were watching and how committed you were to the art form at the time?
So, soaps in the 90s, my main ones were Neighbours predominantly, and also EastEnders, and I've got a kind of working knowledge of some aspects of Corrie and Brookie, because my nan used to be an avid watcher of both of them. So and I can vaguely remember El Dorado as well, and a couple of the kind of failed attempts for the BBC to do like another big soap and that kind of thing. So yeah, predominantly a Neighbours and EastEnders person, but with like a few other dabblings in other soaps as well.
That's interesting you bring up El Dorado so quickly. I mean, I remember that being, or it's looked upon as a massive failure now. Was it sort of derided at the time? Was it seen as a failure then, or were people just sort of watching it and getting on with it?
It was one of these things. It was one of those like so bad it's good things that people were like ripping the piss out of it, but also watching it as well. And I think there was quite a bit of disgruntlement when it finished. The only thing I really remember about it was it had Jesse Birdsall in it, who was a actor that used to play like sort of, he was a rockabilly in real life, and he used to play various kind of thugs in things like, he was definitely in Minder on the Orient Express, where him and Jacko out of Brushstrokes are working for the brain damage guy that's after Arthur. And I read a story that may or may not be like actually true in Boy George's memoir, Take It Like a Man, where he reckons that Birdsall, when he was a rockabilly, used to go around menacing various queer people on the London scene. A lot of, I don't know who he was, but a lot of rockabillys were like involved in like the National Front and stuff around then. Quite sort of a lot of reactionaries in that scene. And apparently this went on until Pete Burns moved up from Liverpool and kicked the absolute shit out of him. So that may not be true, but it's quite. I'd like to think it was. But he plays assholes very well. Does Birdsall? That makes sense in being a arsehole in his youth, if that's the case. He was in The Bill as well, playing that. I keep calling him Jack Branning, but he basically played the same character in The Bill and EastEnders, didn't he? Is The Bill class a soap?
Well, I want to talk about The Bill a bit later on. I can only really find it referred to as a serial drama, but The Bill was definitely one of my favourites in the decade, and I would like to give it a nod a bit later on. So, Alex, what was your soap experience in the 90s?
It was strictly EastEnders for me, and I'd actually thought it was quite a short window. That's how it felt in hindsight, was just a short window where I'd watch it with my family. But actually looking back at the storylines, it kind of covered the whole decade. Because I think the first thing I can remember was Ian Beale I think he found out that Cindy had been cheating on him or something, and he intentionally drove his van and flipped it over. And looking it up on YouTube now, that was 1990. So bang, right at the start of the decade. And then the last sort of stuff I remember was Phil and Grant driving their car off the dock side or the quayside, wherever that was, and sort of Tiffany and all that sort of stuff, which I think was towards the end of the decade. I'm not completely sure, but so it's a good few years that I was watching it, and then never again. I don't really know what was going on there. I'm surprised my family were ever, watching EastEnders, but it was, we would watch it pretty regularly around that time. So, but that's it. I never watched any of the others. It was just, hearing the big storylines talked about in the playground and, maybe seeing them on newspaper front pages and stuff. But yeah, pretty heavily EastEnders for me. How about you?
Well, I clearly remember Phil and Grant driving their car into the water because it was a red Astra estate. I remember that clearly for some reason.
Astra estate, yeah.
Well, for me, I'm sure, like most children of the 90s, it was all to do with my mum and my extended family, and just taking it in via osmosis. I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched a half-hour soap episode from beginning to end, but I know a lot of the things that happened just through being in the room while it was on and doing other things. Specifically on a Thursday night when my mum, her sister, my auntie Pam, would decamp to my nan's house, and I would be there, my dad would be there, and they would sit and watch Emmerdale, Coronation Street, EastEnders all in a row before everybody went home. And I would be, colouring or reading or whatever, but taking it all in at the same time. So for somebody who has never really watched a soap opera episode, as I say, I've got a frightening depth of knowledge about the sorts of things that went on in the decade. Let's have a chat about some of our more memorable soap moments from the decade that we've picked out.
EastEnders, yeah, the Phil and Grant thing with them driving. If I could go back to that, I'm going to third that. As I remember watching that, I was at uni at the time that was happening, and my flatmate Dan was a very avid EastEnders watcher as well. And so I remember that well, watching that, because it had all been built up as great. See, Grant was great back then. When they've brought him back since, it doesn't really work anymore because of how Ross Kemp acts. He was kind of right for them, but I think the acting in EastEnders has generally improved over the years. And I always think Ross Kemp he comes off as really wooden now. In fact, my unpopular view is that I think EastEnders needs Grant to reappear in it. Phil's gone from like the reasonable Mitchell brother to completely objectionable over the years. I think Grant is I don't know which the bad one is out of the yin and the yang, but he's missing the good one, the one that chills you out. He's all the bad one. It's got to be the yang, surely. I don't really know much about Eastern mysticism, but he's the bad one. Well, Grant's also, see, this thing, they were differently bad back then, but I think they ought to recast Grant. I think they ought to bring Grant back, but not have Ross Kemp, because I don't think he's up to playing it anymore, which is a massively unpopular view. This is even more unpopular than when I was at uni, and my other flatmate, Geoff the Goth, come up with this theory, and I thought this was a good one, and I was propagating it myself, that Sean Connery should have played the male lead in Titanic rather than Leonardo DiCaprio. Should have been an older, rugged bloke rather than DiCaprio. I just don't buy that DiCaprio's character would have done all that swashbuckling shit that he's meant to have done. Anyway, I'll digress from that. It'll bring Grant back. But that episode, that was, remember when before they went off of there, the build-up had been that Phil and Grant had got in an argument with these other. How much of a gangster Phil is always kind of debatable, isn't it? He sort of is and he isn't, depending on the writer. But him and Grant were in shit with some actual gangsters, and they went round to their flat to see him, and it was two blokes that were playing a PlayStation, I remember, and it looked like they kind of lived at their mum's house, and they were completely dismissive of them. But then they were like, after they walked out, the guy was like finishing his game, and he's like, "Oh, fucking dead man," or whatever, and they blew the arches up, and they were like, sort of, shit, we've misunderestimated these two nerds, they're dangerous. So they went on a mission to relieve some drug dealers of some money. There was a drug deal going down by the water, and they were going to go down there and twat the fuckery out of these drug dealers and steal their drugs, because they've been told there was two random Herbert. So anyway, they got to do this. This is before anyone had a bloody mobile phone. I never had a mobile phone back then, so Grant Mitchell certainly fucking didn't. So they go off, and then Beppe, who's a fucking little weasel, if you ask me. Basically, Billy finds out that he sees some other, like, rat-faced sort of cockney mate of his, and he's like, "Oh yeah, these lot, I thought you were going to do this drug deal." And he's like, "Oh no, we're not doing that. We're sending this scary bastard that's known to Beppe's going to do the deal now." And he's like, "Shit, they can't have this bloke. He'll fucking kill all of them." So Sam gets hold of Beppe and grasses up her own brothers to the fucking bill. But the thing is, when they got there, Phil and Grant beat the shit out of them anyway, fucking dangerous bastards or not. And my flatmate was like, "That was the fucking hardest thing I've ever seen on TV. The fucking hardest thing ever."
You've ruined my whole life. Ruined the last chance for me to be with my son out of spite.
Yeah, you know something? It was hardly worth the wait.
Stop the car.
Get stuffed.
I said stop the car! Bill!
The Sharon Gate thing's the one that everyone bangs on about, and
yeah,
they always show the thing I remember is not so much the tape, but like Grant throwing Phil down the hole in the arches, which they do that now and again for drugs. The hole in the arches, every now and again, sort of get wanged down there. I think that was the first example of it, was Grant wanging Phil down it, quite rightfully. There's some others. I try to see. This was late 90s. The Phil and Grant driving off, because it was the Millennium Bridge, wasn't it? So it was right at the Millennium Bridge. Well, let's something to do with the Millennium Dome.
That would have been excellent.
See, Grant was an arsehole, really. I don't know why I liked him back then. He was a terrible domestic violence merchant. He hit Tiffany, hit Peggy. He pushed Tiff down some. No, he didn't push Tiff down the stairs, but she made out he did, because he might as well have done, because he was such a fucking violent arsehole anyway. And yeah, this was all to do with Beppe, who I never liked. What's his face? His brother, I thought I met the bloke who was Beppe's brother up the Fringe one year up in the Assembly Room bar, and he was a nice fella. He used to get Sanjay out of EastEnders. She used to be up the Fringe quite regular as well, like watching things. And I'll tell you, so talking of the Mitchells, I remember going to see Daniel Kitson in 2003 when he was doing his first storytelling show, which was brilliant, like a really classic seminal example of like storytelling stand-up. And it's been like not plagiarism, but loads of people have done similar since. But it was at the time, it was like a new thing that someone was doing like a love story. So me and him were doing a bit in John Oliver's show, and he was getting like a massively erratic load of star reviews. Like at one point he just needed a 2. He had a 1 star, he had a 5 star, a 4 and a 3. He's like, I need a fucking 2 star for the full set. So I went to see it, and I was sat behind Steve McFadden and Lucy Benjamin,
Oh, wow.
He would come. McFadden was up at the Assembly Rooms bar, and he was walking around the Assembly Rooms bar most nights wearing that denim shirt that Phil always had all the time, but also wearing shorts, which didn't look right to me because you never pay much attention to Phil Mitchell's legs. Do you know what I mean? But there he was wearing shorts, and he wasn't liking he was part of. There was like, you either got the Kitson show or you didn't. It was quite a good barometer of whether you were a Philistine or not, I thought. But like Phil, it's impossible not to call him Phil Mitchell. But he was like, he wasn't liking it at all. He was in the Philistine camp, I think. No fucking pun intended. But he was going like purpler and purpler. He was getting this like very incredibly well put together, absorbing like romantic comedy story. And then there's like a gap, and he just goes. That sort of sardonic laugh that he does when he's Phil Mitchell. Like, Daniel goes, I don't like the fact I've not heard that laugh before tonight. So then he just gets up and fucking flounces off, like pulling Lucy Benjamin behind him like a fucking child being like pulled out of a branch of The Entertainer or something. And that's my Phil Mitchell story.
Wow.
Right, they sat behind him. He didn't like the Kitson show. I can't remember what it was that made him laugh, but it was a joyless sort of laugh that is only done at someone's expense. And also, I could probably do the Adam Woodyatt gin tasting anecdote as well while I'm dropping names. And so it's me and my wife Sarah. I bought Sarah for her birthday one year. I noticed that I was stuck for her. It's hard to think of presents to buy people in the digital age, do you know what I mean? Like physical things, and sometimes you're better off making memories, I think, than physical gifts. So I noticed there was gin tasting with Adam Woodyatt being held in Bristol, so I was like, all over that. I bought his tickets, and so Woodyatt was there. By the sounds of it, Woodyatt's had a few Ian Beale-esque ventures himself. There was something he said, didn't he, about importing minis. He had a thing we had to guess what was in his gin. I thought that gin was just, I didn't think anything went in gin. I thought gin's fucking gin. Do you know what I mean? Like vodka's vodka, isn't it? Just like gin's just like, it's like an element. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gin, yeah. It's like gin. It's like saying what's in like iron, whatever. Gin. So I learned something there, that things go in gin. I thought you just get gin and you just like add fruity sauce in it or whatever, and then just put your name on the label, and then you got your own gin. So I tasted it, and it was like any fucking gin I've ever had, to be honest. I do like a gin and tonic. Very influenced by Pat Butcher in that regard. But yeah, he seemed a bit kind of, I think he didn't like the fact people had come because it's Ian Beale. I think he's got this bizarre idea that people gave a fuck about the gin, and that he's somehow not separate from Ian Beale, because they're the same. They have to be the same person by now. He's been playing it for it's in 1984, wasn't he? Or 85, EastEnders started. He's been solidly playing Ian Beale since then. He's probably warped by now, yeah. And like stunted, and probably answers to Ian Beale just as readily as Adam Woodyatt. But yeah, so that was another memory of the 90s, was Ian Beale getting shot by Cindy. Got Barry out of EastEnders, hired the assassin. See, Barry did that thing of, this is a common trope in soaps, is you get a character that's introduced as a dodgy, dangerous bastard and then gets reduced to the level of a buffoon. So as Barry started off, and he knew a hitman, for fuck's sake. Do you know what I mean? That's like most. I don't know any fucking hitmen. Frank Butcher was in EastEnders in the 90s, for one thing. The fucking best thing that has ever been in EastEnders. One of the best things that has ever been in like life in Great Britain is Frank Butcher, Mike Reid. He died apparently so skint that it was, for his family, it was like the opposite of inheriting money. I would have thought that he would have been he was a legend. There'd be some gambling thing that like soft asses from Chippenham like us wouldn't fucking understand how it worked. You know what I mean? He'll be going to some place upstairs in a chiropodist in the fucking West End and like chucking dice about and going like ready for the flop, like this one's for the river, and all of that kind of thing.
I do have a meeting Steve McFadden story myself. I'm not sure. Have I told you this one before, Alex, on the podcast?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I say I met him. I can't remember what kind of event it was. I was very, very young, sort of 5 or 6, and my parents took me along to this thing, and Steve McFadden was billed as the star guest. He was late or something, or ill. I can't quite remember. I'll have to ask my mum. She'll probably remember. But it ended up with Steve McFadden being driven around the perimeter of a showground in a Ford Granada, waving out of the passenger window at the assembled crowds, and that was it. There was supposed to be like a meet and greet, but it got reduced to a drive-by wave. So I've seen Steve McFadden from a distance, I suppose, is the best way I can put that.
Nowhere near famous enough for that level of sort of celebrity appearance, is he? I would have thought.
Well,
if it was both of them, if it was Phil and Grant in the back of the Granada, one on each side waving, maybe, but just one of them.
Make it a Red Astra estate and I'm in. I'd like to talk about the first real memory of a massive soap opera storyline that I have, if I can. I'm gonna go over to Emmerdale for this one. And although none of us have sort of mentioned this as one of the programs that we pay particular attention to, I'm sure if I say the Emmerdale plane crash, everyone will know what I'm talking about. So this is from the 30th of December 1993. So Christmas cheer in Soapland, as per usual. And it's coming up for its 30th anniversary, of course. And this really, in the research I was looking at, it marked Emmerdale's graduation from a sort of gentle daytime serial into a serious soap opera. So they used this storyline of the plane crashing on the village in order to clear out a lot of the cast that were already there. I think 4 or 5 of the villagers died in the incident, and they were able to remove the characters and bring some new blood in. And it was really the first time that device was used in order to change the face of a program. And it's been used a lot of times since, obviously, with various other transport-related disasters. I think Coronation Street had a train crash or a tram crash about a decade ago. I'm not too sure.
EastEnders had the Ferris wheel disaster, which no one died in, but they missed an opportunity there. that was nice, I think.
I've not heard of that one, I must say.
Ferris wheel caved. It's when Ian Beale met Jane because she was running a hot dog van. He had some sort of like row with her, and then the Ferris wheel caved in and it landed on, I think it landed on him, and she was like, oh, well, he's been grinding my tits all day, but I wouldn't want him to be crushed to death by a Ferris wheel or anything. But they never, I think they should do this more like they did with Emmerdale. I thought they should do more, but there's not enough kills when they do this. EastEnders do this now and again, but there's only ever like 1 or 2 people. They should do, I'd do if I was writing it, I'd get, especially now, because there's a lot of characters I don't like, I'd have, so Brian Conley once said, doesn't he? Either, if it was me and he'd like gone, oh, I want out, I just wouldn't even bother, I wouldn't even bother writing him out. I'd just not have him in it anymore. There'd just be no mention of him. Just like no one notices, like he's not there. But what I would do is I'd have him go on a killing spree. I'd have him lose his shit and just shoot about another 4 shit characters in short order. And that'd be, but the Emmerdale plane crash was, when was the Lockerbie thing? That was quite a while before, wasn't it?
That was actually the week after I was born, I think. So that was December 88.
So it was long enough, it was like short enough after to have been inspired, but long enough that they couldn't, that they've not gone like, that'll be good, we'll put that tonight in Emmerdale. That just happened this morning. But that was, they changed the theme tune, didn't they, around that time of Emmerdale?
Yeah, and they dropped the farm from the title as well. So it had been Emmerdale Farm up till that point, and then from that moment on, it became just Emmerdale.
Is that because the farm was just flattened by the plane? And there was no farm?
I think the original programme had been set around the farm and the operation of the farm, but then gradually it widened to take in the village and the neighbouring village. And in the end, a title change was needed because of that. But the farm could well have been flattened. I'm not sure. One thing I do know is that a character called Archie Brooks perished in the Emmerdale plane crash, and I know this because it's pretty much the only real thing I remember from actually seeing it at the time. From time to time, if I ever go to my parents' house and my mum's watching Emmerdale, I'll still go in and ask her if Archie's in it and what he's up to. Just to annoy her because he's been dead for 30 years in the programme. And of course, because of my underlying issues, I have never watched the clip of the plane crash again because I'm too frightened.
Casualty had a good. Is Casualty a soap or is Casualty like The Bill? Is it a serial drama?
Yeah, it's when it's based around a specific setting like that. It's I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of it is basically a soap, isn't it? But it's
you'd say so.
On an industry, whether it's the police or a hospital or.
Because I thought it got too soapy for my liking, Casualty. Because I used to like it when it'd be like, they'd be, right, what's going to happen? Like, who's going to get wheeled in today? Then it'd be like, cut to like a building site and like, sort of, fucking hell, mate, you've been like doing coke at fucking 7 a.m. in the morning. You sure you're fit to be handling that pneumatic drill? Oh, I'll be fucking fine. Just cut back to show. But I remember there was a plane crash, one of them. And it was one of them ones. I always love a TV show and they get the continuity goes like the war viewers is will put their shits right up you. You're getting on a fucking plane in the morning. It will. And there was another one that was at a riot and it had to be shown at like 9:30 or something because it was something on like an estate and there were some youths with baseball caps. It caused like a big riot or whatever. And there was like there was like cars on fire and stuff and then it got more soap opera. Similar to The Bill. The Bill just used to be like police stuff, and then it got more and more soap-like. And I think Casualty's like that. That just made me think of that Casualty plane crash. And I do like a public warning before an episode or something. That's always a good, like, a reason to fucking watch it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like we pulled our finger out. This is going to have some actual fucking, not just someone slipping up and like breaking their ass in a bloody ballroom dancing club or whatever. This will be like serious shit tonight and all of that. Yeah, don't watch it if you're scared of plane crashes because it's probably on YouTube. But I wouldn't watch it because it's terrible.
Probably why I liked The Bill so much during this period, and it was one of my favourite programmes, was because it was focused more on the procedural side of the police and not so much on the personal lives of the characters. And I became convinced that a life in the police force was for me from between the ages of about 6 and 9. I've done a bit of research recently and some lovely soul has uploaded 3 series worth of episodes from The Bill in the 90s, right around the period when I would have been watching it. So there's a YouTube odyssey coming on there where I can relive some of my finest moments. Favourite character was PC Dave Quinnen, played by an actor called Andrew Paul, who's popped up in a lot of other things since. And I really love The Bill. Although, is it a soap? Well, probably not.
Quinnen was one of the main soap opera elements, wasn't it? Quinnen and Polly Page.
Indeed, towards the end, yes, yeah, quite right, yeah.
Quinnen's in Bugsy Malone. It's one of those odd like bits because Bugsy Malone was filmed over here, wasn't it? There's loads of odd bits like Mark Curry's in it. Quinnen's he plays a cop in it. The Bill was a soap, but not in the 90s, I suppose, would be the best way to put it.
I mean, there's a little link, actually, between the Emmerdale plane crash and the incident I'm going to talk about. Because I was going to talk about the Brookside body under the patio. It's other really big story of the 90s. But that links back to Emmerdale because I don't know if you know, but there's a little Easter egg in Emmerdale, which in the 5th of January 1994 episode, one of the characters is reading a newspaper in the pub, and the front page says, "Air disaster, toll rises, village mourns as many die." Obviously referring to the plane crash from Emmerdale. So there was that little crossover, which I quite like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Brookside body under the patio, it wasn't something I watched at the time because I didn't watch Brookside, but I remember hearing about it. It was a big, tabloid fodder soap story. But it was to do with a domestic abuser character.
Trevor Jordache.
Yeah, that's it, Trevor Jordache. Yeah, and he came back and found his wife or his ex-wife and kids, one of whom was played by Anna Friel, and sort of moved back into the house against their will, and they ended up killing him and then burying his body under the patio, which was then discovered 2 years later. I didn't know that it was about domestic abuse. I didn't know anything about it other than the fact someone had killed someone and buried them under the patio. But it sounds like it was actually more of a, quite a hard-hitting story before that, in the lead up to that, because domestic abuse stories, I don't know how often they were on TV before, leading up to this sort of period of TV.
There was a few, but Trevor Jordache was a particularly heinous example of it. He was played by I don't know if you remember, do you used to watch Bread, or would that be before its 80s? I actually think Bread did run into the 90s, but he was Cousin Shifty in Bread, who was probably the biggest, like, sort of politically incorrect Scouse stereotype in it, was their lovable thieving cousin Shifty with his mullet. But yeah, that was the lesbian kiss also involving Anna Friel was like a huge deal at the time as well, and that was treated differently, very differently to the gay kiss in EastEnders, which I think might have been right at the tail end of the 80s, in fact. But it was literally Colin packed on the cheek his boyfriend, and there was a massive fucking shitstorm about it in the papers. And Piers Morgan wrote a famous Sun bit. The headline was "It's EastBenders," where he was like saying that like you'd basically imply that you'd get fucking AIDS from like watching EastEnders and stuff. Rabid fucking homophobia. But then when it was like now you get like Callum and Ben kiss all the time, like with tongues and that, and it's not quite rightly no one gives a shit. But like back then that was enough. But when it was Anna Friel getting off, I can't remember what she even got off with, but it was like this sort of double standard, like, whoa, more of that, lads kind of attitude to it. It was the time of like Loaded and all of that. I think she was in Loaded, and she was on like Shooting Stars with Vic and Bob, so she was sort of like on the peripheries of all that kind of cool Britannia stuff, which I thought was fucking ace at the time, and it's probably why we're in the fucking shit we're in now, to be honest with you. But like, that was at the time, it was great. But yeah, that was a big one, the Brookie thing.
Come on, pull it up. Ah! What? What is it? What is it? It's a hand.
Jimmy Corkill in Brookside doing shitloads of drugs was another. I fucking love Jimmy Corkill. He apparently keeps writing to all the other soaps wanting to be brought back in another soap, but playing Jimmy Corkill.
Well, here's an idea. How about getting him to play Grant Mitchell for the recast?
Yes. That's not a bad idea at all, because Jimmy could do sort of like Unhinged, but he was never violent. But then like I don't know, he could. I expect Jimmy Corkill could have a fight if you like walked up to him in a pub and just like pissed all over his shoes or something. I expect he'd batter the fuck out of you. Not the sort of person who goes looking for it, but I just always think of him as like just like always shouty, even in like comment. So he'd be like the typical Corkill thing of being like, sort of, get us an ham sandwich, tin head. He'd be like, we've got no ham, Jim. Jeez, then, soft lad. Shouty, but in a kind of just in your face way. Tin head was fucking ace as well. I know he was only called Tin Head like, early on in it, but he's never. Once you're called Tin Head, to me, you're called fucking Tin Head, mate, and that's the end of it. There'll be no referring to. I called Callum in EastEnders Callum rather than Halfway for the first time in my fucking life just now. As well, on this thing, I was keeping. If you've got a shit nickname early doors in soap, I will stick with it. But yeah, if I was to have Jimmy Corkill move into Albert Square, then you'd have to have Ron Dixon move in first. And do a like sort of, here we go, Bev, this is a new start for me, and I'm like, in posh London, there's going to be no Jimmy Corkills to get on my tits while I'm here like, all right, dicko, I'm fucking dealing heroin, I'm in fucking flat next door to you. Christ, when I can't remember if it was 90s or 2000s, but when Jimmy Corkill found the photos of the nudes of Ron and Bev on his computer and had a T-shirt printed with naked Ron and Bev on it and walked into the pub or whatever and unveiled it, and Dixon had a fucking heart attack at the sight of it. I fell off the fucking sofa laughing. More of that kind of thing. More funny. Jim Robinson in Neighbours, that was another funny heart attack. That was he acted it too well.
Yeah, another example of things being much better in the 90s than they are now. Coronation Street. And in particular, Deirdre, the Weatherfield one. This is obviously another one that's stuck in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will remember it too. And before I researched it, I thought it was to do with the character Samir Rashid, but that's actually to do with a different storyline. So she met Samir on holiday in Morocco, and then brought him back to Weatherfield and married him. And unfortunately, Samir does pass away, but not before donating a kidney to Deirdre's daughter. So that was a completely different storyline. I thought it was all tied up with the Weatherfield 1 stuff. But this is actually completely separate, and it involves her getting conned by a trickster who goes on to implicate her in his financial scams, and then portrays her as the brains of the operation when he's caught. She gets sent down in the programme, but a huge public campaign was mounted. I'm not sure anything like it has really been seen before or since. It was even discussed in Parliament at one point, which is amazing to think of.
Has gripped the nation for weeks. Even the Prime Minister had something to say when Deirdre Rashid was wrongly jailed for a crime she didn't commit. Well, today, Deirdre tastes freedom again. Our North of England correspondent Ben McCarthy reports.
This is Coronation Street, where the character Deirdre Rashid will return after her release from jail. And today, while there's no filming going on, it's open to members of the public, so that fans of the programme can make their pilgrimage here. And it's on this famous set where the distinction between fiction and reality becomes blurred.
The jailing of Deirdre led to newspaper outrage, the intervention of the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister being briefed at Downing Street on the case of the Weatherfield 1. But tonight she'll learn that she's to be freed.
Out. You're going out.
Oh, yeah. Like last time.
I'm going to miss you.
One fan took the storyline so much to heart that she sent £5,000 to the campaign to have Deirdre released.
It eventually gets resolved when a similarly tricked lady from earlier on in the trickster's career comes forward, and then the truth comes out and Deirdre is exonerated. But for a story to capture the imagination of a nation like that is very rare indeed, and I think it's the only example I can think of where it involves newspaper front pages, questions in Parliament, and a real groundswell of public support.
Part of me thinks that it's awesome that the question was asked in Parliament, and part of me also thinks that MP should have been deselected. There's got to be a law against that, against frivolities like that in Parliament. Imagine if they'd geared up to ask it, there'd been like a major train crash that day or something like that, with some serious shit going on. Well, I've got a question about Coronation Street. It was big thing. What struck me is the picture they used of Deirdre for all the publicity for it. She's always got the same fucking face expression anyway, whether she's being sent to jail for years or whether she's just stood in the shop buying a packet of tea bags or whatever. She always had that kind of freaked out look about her. But I remember it well. I was at uni when that was going on. I think I remember being at the goth night at Mirage, and there was someone had a T-shirt on or something with a Weatherfield 1 thing on it. So it's a big deal. I wasn't watching Corrie at that precise juncture, but it was that big that you kind of Deirdre Barlow's one of them characters that whether you watch programme or not, you know of them. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing with Coronation Street. Even if you don't watch it, you can only really be so ignorant of it. But then it's different now. Do you know what I mean? Because there's so much. When there was still really in effect sort of 3 channels that anyone really watched at that point, and I know there was Sky and stuff, but if something was on ITV, it was on. If you were on telly, you were on telly back in those days. But I wasn't watching Coronation through that juncture because I was at uni and not spending any time around at my nan's, who was the Corrie viewer in our family.
What were the big storylines from Neighbours from the 90s then? Because obviously it's just been relaunched. It's sort of in the news again, for better or worse. But
we've been watching Neighbours solidly since about January, because when Prime announced they were bringing it back, they started off showing 50 classic Neighbours episodes, and then the last one they just carried on from 2012. We're now on 2019. We've watched 7 years of Neighbours that neither of us have seen before, because we both give up watching it around. I think I give up watching it about 2002, something like that. I think it was the last time I watched it. It's the 90s. The big plot lines of the 90s were Neighbours was bigger than fucking Jesus in the 80s and 90s. It was the biggest fucking thing they had, and big plot lines. There was more sort of characters and stuff. There was Annalise was very popular at the time, and she was on the front of Loaded magazine at one point. There was Jim Robinson dying of a heart attack. I remember that. Todd Landers getting run over. That was funny. I never liked him. My dad never liked him. We sort of bonded about that. And sat in tea, and they got fucking skittled, mate, by a car. He was going out with Phoebe, who was the daughter of. She was an undertaker's daughter, and seen as like a bit of a freak. But then I think Todd took her glasses off and undone her hair, and like, my God, you're beautiful. And she had a kid with him that they called Hope. There was fucking none for Todd. He was fucked. Carl Kennedy first appeared in the 90s. I was displeased to see. I've never liked Carl Kennedy. And if anything, watching it again, I thought maybe I'll like warm to Carl Kennedy. It's like, if anything, my distaste has grown even greater from watching him now. It's just, Neighbours was just like, it was just always, it was like, it wasn't so much, they weren't big sensational plot lines that captured the imagination like they were in EastEnders and Coronation Street. It was just like a thing. And like back then, if you'd have told me that it wouldn't be on anymore, that it wouldn't be on the BBC, I'd have thought you were fucking insane. It used to be on twice a day, because it started off being on at 1:30 in the afternoon, but then people were bunking off school to watch it, so they had to put it on at 5, like 4. It used to be on at like 1:30 till 10 to 2, and then it'd be on like 20 to 6. So it'd be after like Grange Hill or Blue Peak, whatever. Mm-hmm. Then there'd be Neighbours, and then there'd be the news. So if you were like on the school holidays, if you're off school sick or bunking off, you'd see it. You'd watch it twice a day, no problem. There wasn't really any. There wasn't. That was it. There was fuck all else on. You'd watch Neighbours for the second time and just see if you like missed anything the last time you watched it, which you probably wouldn't. But yeah, it was just like a constant sort of background thing with Neighbours, and you thought it's sort of thing you thought would be on like forever. But the rumour used to be, when I was at school, was that Neighbours, it was 20 minutes long, and it's actually longer in Australia. I know this. I've been watched it over there. I've seen it. It's like that was confirmed. But what people said was, in Australia, there's an extra 10 minutes which features like swearing, violence, and nudity that is edited for the British telly. And that was the idea, was that Australians were all coarse, and they would sit and watch like actual shagging at like 10 to 6 in the evening and not give a fuck about it. But yeah, that's not the case at all. They're just slightly longer episodes over there. I went to, I don't know if this is libelous or not, but I went to allegedly, I went to visit when I was over in Melbourne doing the comedy festival. I went to visit the Neighbours set with a mate of mine, and we went around. It's fucking great. You go around like the Ramsey Street and stuff, and afterwards they were trying to sell us this thing where you go and have like a drink in a pub with the stars of Neighbours, and we were like, right, who's that going to be? And they were like, oh, they're like Carl Kennedy. I'm like, I'm not having that. So what about like Lou Carpenter? I have a drink with Lou Carpenter. And Lou Carpenter's not doing it. And he goes like Libby Kennedy, no. My friend, she goes like, what about? And he goes like, well, confidentially, and he basically allegedly he said that banned from doing it anymore because he's all over the fucking United Kingdom. Yeah, that may or may not be true. Toadfish first appeared, I think, in the 90s. First of all, there was Stonefish, and he was the bully. And then Toadfish was his little arsehole of a brother. Watching it now, Toadie is now like the hero protagonist of the whole thing. It's difficult to remember when he was that little bastard with the ponytail that was menacing Hannah Button Martin. She used to work at, I think it was Warner Brothers or something like that. There was some place where you'd go for like meetings, and Hannah, like the Neighbours, was on the reception. Yeah, that was like a minor talking point. There's like, you go there and there's fucking Hannah at a Neighbours sat behind the reception, but don't go "G'day, Button" to her, because she's probably fucking heard that too many times. I'm trying to think of like a big plot line from Neighbours. It's like they just kill people off from time to time. And there was a whole thing of it being like, it used to be behind us by about like 12 years or something like that back in those days. There was an Australian kid in our year at school, and when he first came to our school, the first thing that he got was basically like fucking corralled by everyone. And everyone was like, what the fuck's going on in Neighbours? Like, sort of like who are these identical twins that have appeared? Fucking tell us, like, you've seen 20 years worth of Neighbours, presumably. Like, I never thought he'd be axed. It's like I never thought Brookside would be axed, but it got bloody axed, and EastEnders will probably get fucking axed if they don't pull their finger out with this bloody. I'm not liking EastEnders at the minute. I'm a big EastEnders fan. This is the least I've enjoyed it for a long time. Not just Brian Conley as well. He's not even the worst offender, in fact.
Well, it sounds like I need a good plane crash, doesn't it? I hope when you've been going through your rewatch of Neighbours from 2012, you have been watching one episode twice a day at 1:30 and 5:15. And that's the way you're doing
it's been a drip feed. It's just like it's like the same as like my tinnitus or whatever. It's just got there. It's just like every week now. No, there's just like nice in the background. I think it's actually better at the point we're watching it now than it was when I stopped watching it in terms of actual quality of plot lines.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. It just needs Lou Carpenter back. I know he's nearly dead and everything, but they should put like bionic implants in him or something like that. So they could AI him. They could do artificial. They could fucking have Frank Butcher back in EastEnders. I mean, it might kill us all AI, but we could have a bit of Frank Butcher back. He'd fucking sort some of these bastards out that are on it now. Frank Butcher would fucking, what's his face, fucking Nish. He'd fucking, a dry slap he'd give him, or at least threaten to give him one.
Well, Will, thanks so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show to talk through some of the bigger talking points of soap in the 90s. We hope you'll come back again soon, obviously. I'm sure we can arrange that.
Absolutely, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on again, mate. Like, please do have me back. I've always enjoyed coming on here.
Oh, we will do. It's always a pleasure to have you. So apart from running the best barbershop and beauty parlour in Chippenham, is there anything else going on at the moment that you could tell the listeners about to look out for?
I've got a stand-up special that will be coming out very soon. That I filmed with Go Faster Stripe, who I've done my previous DVDs with. This one's going to be free on. We're just going to bung it up on YouTube because no one buys DVDs anymore, and I don't want to have just like a load of fancy coasters, so that'll be free. So because people keep asking me if I've got stuff on YouTube, and I do, but it's like nearly 20-year-old stuff. So this will be an actual finding. It's going to be an actual sort of like representative thing of what I do now up on YouTube. I'm still doing Bawdy comics. I've not released any new comics for a while because I've been doing a book, which is also with Go Faster Stripe, which will also hopefully be coming out fairly soon, but I've still got an Etsy shop, Bawdy Comics Group. That's BAWDY Comics Group, and there's still previous issues for sale on there. Chippenham's nicest lo-fi pornography comics, and yeah, that's about Chippenham Comedy Club is the last Thursday of every month. So that's everything, I think.
Brilliant. Well, we'll pop up all the relevant links in the episode description so that all the listeners can go and check all that out.
Thank you ever so much. Absolute pleasure to see you guys. Have a good one, mate. Yeah.
Very many thanks again to Will for taking us through some of the bigger talking points of soap opera in the 90s. It's always fun having Will on the pod, isn't it?
Oh, so much fun. Yeah, just one of those naturally funny people who, whatever they're talking about is just... it's entertainment. They are a present-day raconteurs, and we should cherish them.
Absolutely superb. We will do our best to get them back on the show very soon.
What are we doing next time, Stu?
We mentioned in one of our previous episodes about the sad passing of CITV, which by the time you hear this, will be no longer with us. So we decided, if it's okay with you, the listener, we're going to do another TV-themed episode next time out, and we're going to do a CITV special where I am going to take Alex through some of my favourite CITV programmes and try and convince him that it was an equal to CBBC.
Well, you've got your work cut out in that respect, Stu, because it's going to take some doing, but I know I'm open to it. Let's see what happens.
You'll be dancing on CITV's grave and you know it. Until then, Alex, how can everybody get in touch with us to let us know their best 90s soap moments, their best 90s CITV programmes, anything else they want to get in touch with us about? How can they do that?
Well, they can scroll down to the episode description below and you will find a link to our link tree, which links directly to our Twitter and our Instagram. accounts which you can use to get in touch with us, or even our email address is on there. So many different ways for you to get in touch, and also our Facebook, I should say. So go on there, send us a message, and we'll read it out. We always endeavour to read out everything we get sent, and we would love to hear from you.
So until next time, when we go through some of the highlights of CITV in the 90s, it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to bury a body under the patio.
And I'm just off to discover it 2 years later.
Goodbye for now.
Cheerio.
I've ended it, yeah.
Oh, we can still hear you, mate.
Oh, how about now?
Yep, still got you.
Oh my God. All the windows are closed.
This is going to make a great bit for the end of the episode.